All right, happy November 2nd, everybody. This is a meeting to check in on active development tasks for Backdrop CMS. We have a couple of exciting announcements for community growth this week. We have a new member of the Contrib group, Opie, who submitted an application request a couple of weeks ago, has agreed to our terms and conditions, and so now he's been added to the group and is moving over Contrib modules, so that's great. Opie was someone that started as a core developer and now ended up in Contrib, which is something I'm actually finding increasingly common in Backdrop, which is great. Speaking of people who are starting as core developers, we also have a new contributor this week, so we want to specifically send a shout out to Anna Collada for core pull requests in the queue as well. So thank you guys very much for helping to make Backdrop better. We appreciate your time and code. New since last week, we have a couple of projects with official Contrib releases, automated logout, leaflet library, and OAuth. I'm not sure if OAuth was there before or not. I didn't check that or not, but there are new releases out for those projects this week. Moving on to backdropcms.org. Last week I mentioned that I was going to be working on building and theming the showcase section of the website. I found the old design. I posted it in the issue, so if you're interested in seeing what it's going to look like, it's issue number 176 in the backdropcms.org queue. The one thing that is a little different between the design that we have now and the site that we have now is we rearranged a little bit for having the drawer move to be a horizontal navigation, and we changed around the colors. So I think I can follow the same thing that we did to the modules page and the themes page with the gray background on the top instead of on the bottom. But I'd love to have somebody with some more design instinct tell me if there's anything else that needs to be adapted. If not, I'm just going to plan on doing that and hoping that that works out okay. We can always fix it later, but I'd love to just get it up. So I'm also hoping that the design that we're going to do for the showcase section of the site can be reused on the themes section of the site, because that's what it was originally intended for, and then it was adapted for showcase. So hopefully we'll get some support for screenshots on themes, and then we'll be able to pull those into the Backdrop site and use this design there as well. Okay, other things that are going on in the world of Backdrop. Doc Wilmot has devoted a ton of time to working on the forum, so thank you very much for doing that. I am so excited to see all of the activity in the forum issue queue. Not only is he going through the list of like minimum viable product requirements, he's also going through the longer list of like, this is what make an awesome forum requirements. So I'm really excited about getting that forum to a usable state. We've also had a couple of requests lately via the email address on backdropcms.org where people are asking about how to use the forum, or where is the forum, or when can I use the forum, and having that usable I think is going to be really great for our community. So during our outreach meeting earlier today, we talked about how that might be a great topic for the next newsletter we should send to our members. And that newsletter is tentatively scheduled for November 15th. So I wanted to run that by Doc Wilmot and see if that timeline is realistic or not. And if so, I think I would love to promote all of the fantastic work he's been doing over there. So anyone who's curious about the forum definitely can go ahead and log in. I think Jeff, you were in there yesterday and made a couple of issues. But yeah, great work, Doc Wilmot. It's looking good. All right, Backdrop CMS, the project itself. Nate, do you want to just give us a quick rundown? Were you here?
Yeah.
Oh, you're the agenda.
Yeah, I'm the talking agenda. So I was commenting before the meeting started that we're about like this hasn't been a very exciting week as far as our target items go that we usually bring up on the agenda. For 1.8.1, that'll be our next bug fix release. Right now, the items that we have mentioned here for the 1.81 release include a bunch of cross ports. All four of these issues that include a series of cross ports from 777.50 up to 7.56. All four of them are in a needs work state. almost all of them have substantial amounts merged into them. Probably about 3/4 of each of them are all done. And then there's probably like around 5 cross ports in each issue that have yet to be completed. So we're looking really good on getting the parity between these things completed. There's actually code in place for pretty much everything, but it's just needs a little bit more cleanup. Like the tests aren't fully passing, or every now and then there's just a little find to replace, like Drupal into backdrop kind of situation. So all those cross ports are in a good place, but we haven't seen any activity in them in the past week to actually push them forward to completion. 1.81, as far as its schedule is concerned, we still don't have any critical things to initiate a bug fix release. There are a number of small items that have been filed, as well as some new pull requests that have come in. I guess I also should give a shout out. Thanks, John Franklin, for a series of pull requests that are currently all in the needs review state. Those are currently the ones that we'll probably be taking a look at here in the very near future. But nothing for 1.81 that would initiate a release. Although once we get these cross ports completed, it would be good just to push them out in a nice, low importance release, just to get them all at the door and to get parity with all the cross ports. That's it for 1.8.1, unless there's anything else anybody else needs to bring up. 1.9. 1.9 is our next minor release, which will be coming out January 15th, 2018. So first release of next year. And right now, most of our attention is being put forward towards better media handling, or in particular, better file handling. And there's a big meta issue for that at issue 1448 that lists out all of the things that we would like to do to improve the file handling capabilities. The first one that will probably get completed here in the near future is issue 2796, which gives us the ability to edit files, that is, replace a file that has been uploaded, and probably eventually edit the fields that will be on that file. But for now, it's just entirely about editing a file entity and replacing the file that is attached to that entity. Even trying to describe this, I'm running into the perennial issue of the terminology around what we should use here. And I think that we still have to have more discussion over what term is the right one when we say, like, you're editing a file entity, but not the file itself. Like, how should we deal with that particular problem? So feedback is definitely very, very welcome on that issue 2796. Code-wise, the only thing we really have to do is we need to add an upgrade path to edit the view, to add the edit link, or whatever link that thing will be labeled. Let's see. After making files editable, we may also make them fieldable, which is issue 2632. I reviewed this pull request last week, even though it still needs work. I gave it kind of some more extensive thoughts on that particular issue. There's a huge amount of code in there regarding what is it? There's some. Hang on, I'm just gonna take a look at this. I must have only posted to the pull request. There's some code in here that is, yes, the file metadata table, which there's a whole bunch of handling in here that was pulled over from file entity, I assume. And the file metadata table pretty much stores the height and width of images. And it seems like there's a lot of code in there that's like acting as though it's like building onto something else. And if we wanted to, we could simplify this implementation quite a bit in Backdrop by not making it be like an additional thing, like built on from the outside or bolted on from the outside, but make it more integrated into the core system. And potentially, instead of having a separate table for this metadata, which includes the primary purpose of image height and width, we could just put in a height and width on the managed file table instead. And that would make our implementation a lot simpler. And just as you uploaded files, we would just record that information. And then if there was other metadata, which it looks like that module was intended to be expanded upon, like split that out into a different, into a contrib module. So anyway, that pull request basically has just got a lot going on, and probably could just be reduced down in its complexity to really focus it on dealing with having fieldable files and not so much about metadata around files when they're uploaded. Yeah, so just some thoughts on that one. But overall, it's a really great port. Like it's done a really great job of taking the file entity module from 777 and making it fully compatible with Backdrop. So I'm really excited that all of that code is there. It's an excellent port, but I think that we need to just tighten it down a little bit for Core's implementation. And lastly, uploading a file manually is issue 2633. This one, Jen did some work on it before 1.8 was released. I think everyone's in agreement that that code is also kind of more complex than it needs to be. Kind of the same situation. It's a good port from file entity module, but for Core's implementation, we may want something just a little bit more straightforward. So that one will probably hold off on until 2796 is complete. That gives us the form for editing a file. We could reuse that for adding a file instead of having an entirely different separate system for creating files. Those are the items that we have slated. Oh. What was that, Jen?
We lost you there for a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Well, those are the only items that we have slated for 1.9 that we call it during these meetings. There hasn't been a lot of code, although there has been some new feedback posted in the last week. Let's keep cracking on these things, and the sooner the better. It may seem like January is a long way off here at the beginning of November. Historically, also, I know holidays typically is when work slows down for anything that is client related, but holidays can be a strangely active time in a community driven project. So I'm not putting pressure on anybody to work over the holidays. I'm just saying I'm excited to see what will end up happening or what will come out of the holiday season, because we tend to have people that in their spare time enjoy working on Backdrop. So I'm excited. Going into the holiday season is actually a really positive thing for the Backdrop community. So
yeah, we also seem to tend to work in burst mode just before releases. So
yes, and we also work in burst mode. That is very true. And burst, as we get towards the Christmas season, that will correspond, or it will line up with the code freeze, because code freeze will again be at the first of the month, so on New Year's Day basically will be code freeze day. And we also typically sometimes move things around based on where code freeze day actually lands. It looks like January 1st is actually a Monday, which is perfect, because that means that it'll be a holiday, and we'll have that off, so we'll have the whole weekend right before code freeze. So in this case, it looks like January 1st actually will actually stay our code freeze. We won't be pushing it out any difference based on the landing of holidays or anything like that. So anyway, that's it for the 1.9 status update and the Backdrop project and code in general. I'll kick it back to you, Jen, for general discussion and Q&A.
Okay. So last week in our meeting with Facet, we were trying to come up with possible contents for a newsletter. And in that conversation, we were trying to figure out whether the people on the newsletter were mostly people who were curious about Backdrop, or people who are using Backdrop, or people who were just kind of interested in following along with all the drama. And since we don't really know the makeup of our newsletter, one of the things they recommended we do is send out a survey. And that might help us get a better idea of who's on that list and what they want to hear from us. And so they recommended that we come up with 5 questions that we could ask people that we think would be valuable for the Backdrop. You know, what would be valuable for us in terms of what the work that we're doing. So in terms of, you know, what do you want to see on our website, or what do you need from the forum, or what do you need from the software? Those might be good questions to ask people. So I came out with 2 questions that we could ask. One of which I thought is like, you know, who are you in terms of, do you own a website? Are you a developer? Are you, I don't know, a site builder? Are you a themer? Like, who do you identify with in terms of how you work with the software? And another one would be, what are you thinking about adopting Backdrop? And if so, like what's preventing you from adopting it right now? And so I don't know exactly how to ask those questions, but I thought it might be something that we could at least come up with ideas on, like whether, you know, do you want to see more sites on Backdrop? Are you waiting for more things to be ported from Drupal? Are you just waiting for the right project to come along? You've already got a bunch of sites and you're not interested in moving them yet, but new sites you want to put on Backdrop. Or are you unsure about like the differences still between Drupal and Backdrop, and that makes you hesitate? So just trying to figure out like what it is that people need from us could help us figure out what to deliver in terms of content for the blog or the newsletter, or anything else. So I didn't know if you guys had ideas about things we might want to ask in a survey. And this could be the kind of thing that we tack on to, for example, the newsletter, if we can send one out about the forum, or if we don't have the forum ready, this might be a good content delivery for in place of that announcement. So we could say like, hey, what is it you need? And then guess what? If everybody says we need a forum, the next newsletter will say, guess what? You have a forum. So that could be really nice too, making people feel like their voices are heard. So yeah, does anyone have any thoughts on what we want to know from all these people that have opted into our mailing list?
Nothing comes to mind now. Whatever you just mentioned seems like good. Do we have an issue where we can just throw ideas, like, or
that's a good idea.
With a list.
Okay, I'll make one.
I'd probably say maybe asking people like when they're planning on launching a Backdrop site. I'm not sure if that would just be useful for us to know. I'm not sure if it would help us deliver content. Like I'm planning on building a Backdrop site in the next, you know, like I'm building one now, in the next 6 months, in the next year. You know, no plans, but I'm interested, kind of thing.
Any other ideas? I'll go ahead and create an issue on backdropcms.org and tag it with outreach. And if anyone comes up with anything over the next 2 weeks or something, we can add those questions in. I mean, I think even if it's just 3 questions with follow-ups, that's fine. We can work with that too.
I think that a good one is if people have candidate sites that they're thinking of moving to Backdrop, that thing, and what's stopping them. That's a really big one, because it helps us understand what we need to improve in order to have people actually, attempt the move.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And actually making some of these, well, it'd be excellent if people actually took the time to fill out open answered questions, because we would definitely take the time to read them. But yeah, I don't know if making them open-ended, probably would reduce the feedback rate.
Okay. I mean, I think we could always have like other and let people add in their answers if they want. Next on our general discussion is for translation and internationalization. I think this is probably something we can pull off the weekly newsletter because we've talked about it for a while. The plan right now is figuring out which issues or submodules from I-18N are most pressing to figure out. And if we find anything that we think should be fixed in Backdrop Core, we'll then create a core issue based on those needs as well. The main issue here is that we're in the same position for translation and internationalization with Backdrop as we were with Drupal. And we want to have we'd like to be able to say that there's improvement in Backdrop over Drupal for translation. And in order to do that, we need to know what's the most important thing to improve and figure out what of those things can be improved in 1 versus what needs to wait till Backdrop 2. And we can't do that without active sites that are using translations that have real use cases. And so I know we've got the Backdrop for Good site currently being translated, which is one thing that we can use as a test case for making sure that we get translation and internationalization cleaned up a little bit for Backdrop. But anyone else who's working on translated site, definitely please participate in the issue queue, both for I-18N for the internationalization contrib project, as well as for core. If you find something frustrating in core you wish was done a little better, that is one of our priorities for improving. So if anyone needs to have a larger conversation about that, I would encourage us to put it back on the meeting agenda. But for now, I'm going to take it off because I think most of the conversations are going to be happening in the issue queue for a little while in the foreseeable future.
Since that, I haven't touched translation and localization for like a long time, but it seems like a big issue. Do you guys think it's worth having a dedicated sort of like session, like a hangout, just for that? It doesn't have to be public.
Yeah, I think if we get to a point where there are people that want to have a conversation about it, it would be great to take that, try and push it forward in whatever way we can. And if that's a dedicated hangout or like a second weekly after this meeting where people are working on it, I think that's good. I just think right now we don't have enough people working on it to justify talking about it every week. But if that should change, or if, I don't know, that becomes a priority in the next few weeks, we can definitely put it back on and make it part of this meeting. If it becomes a bigger conversation than that, we should definitely make its own meeting, because it's one of our priorities. And we want to make sure that we make that easier for people. Okay, well, I think that's everything we had on the agenda, but if there was anything you guys want to talk about that wasn't on the agenda today, now is a good time. No. Okay. Nothing super urgent. All right, well, I will go ahead and wrap this meeting then, I guess. I'll create the issue for the general survey we want to send out and look for feedback there. Otherwise, I would say if anyone has any questions watching this video now or watching it later, feel free to tweet at backdropcms.org, or you can email us info@backdropcms.org, or you can join us in Gitter, where there's always people to chat live And of course, we always have the issue queue where there's always exciting stuff going on. So thank you guys for joining this meeting this week, and we will do this again this time next week.
Okay, bye. Thank you, everybody.